For thousands of generations, the gunslingers were knights, sworn to protect us from the coming of the dark.
These visions, as you call them.
What do you see?
I see a tower, the man in black, and the gunslinger.
They're just dreams. They're not real, Jake.
There's another world out there. I know there is.
This is the Film Board from The Next Reel on rashpixel.fm. We spoil movies, and this month we take on the new big screen approach to Stephen King's hybrid fantasy western series, The Dark Tower. I want to introduce you to our hosts first tonight, and I think that it's important for each of us to describe our history with the source material for some context and our frame of reference, because after seeing this movie, I think that's what's probably going to dominate our conversation here, is whether you can call it an adaptation or whatever it is. I think that's what we're going to talk about. So on a scale of Wastelands to Song of Susanna, tell the people how much you live the Gunslinger Code. Andy Nelson.
Well, I don't even know what you're referencing there with Wastelands and Song of Susanna. So
perfect.
So I've never read any of the Gunslinger novels.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here.
I've read a good number of Stephen King novels. I understand Stephen King has this universe. He ties a lot of things together. I've read, The Eye of the Dragon, The Stand. So I know that there's this Randall Flagg character who kind of ties across them all. And figures prominently in this story. But other than kind of the basic concept of the gunslinger and that it was kind of this Western sci-fi sort of story, I don't know anything about it. So I'm a newbie walking in on this one.
That is so awesome, and I'm really glad to hear that. I was wondering how we were going to divorce ourselves from the source material for this, and you are going to be our great sort of purifier on this show, Andy, because let's hear about your history, Tommy Handsome.
I'm Tommy Handsome, and all film board thugs serve the beam. I have read all of the novels, all of the Dark Tower series, all of the connectors from Stephen King, from Hearts in Atlantis to Eyes of the Dragon to everything sort of across the board. So I was very thrilled to see this actually come to life. We'll see how I thought about it, and that's what I have to say. Thank ye, I beg.
See, and now that's some of the language, which actually wasn't in the movie, so Andy's still not going to know what you're talking about, Tommy.
No idea.
So I've read all the books. I should say I've read the 7 books that are in the sort of major set for The Dark Tower. There actually is another book that was written post The Dark Tower, which I found out in doing my research for this show. I'm going to have to go into the show notes and find that title as well. But I read all of them. My memory is a little bit hazy from them, but I loved the books. I was very much into them when I was reading them. I really sort of cherish the source material, and I care a lot about the mythology. That being said, the concepts are the things that I remember as opposed to the specifics. So that's kind of where we're going to get down to it. And I think that may set us with some nice gradation for the three of us and how we will approach this, and spoiling it for everyone out there who hasn't, or maybe just saw the movie or hasn't seen it yet. So before we get started, I wanted to let everybody know that you can find out more about this show and its sibling shows at thenextreel.com, and then follow us for some fun movie frivolity on Facebook and Twitter at The Next Reel. So let's start off with our initial thoughts, and I think I want to switch that up a bit. So let's start with Tommy, because let's talk about what you thought you were going to get into when you came and saw this movie, and how it sat with you based on what you know intimately of the source material.
Where are we with spoilers as far as the entire book series versus this film?
That is a great question. Andy, do you have any sort of thoughts about that?
I
think we're just spoiling now.
When it comes to the book series, yeah, I mean, if people are tuning in, I think we just say right now that we're going to be spoiling the book series. At least Tommy and JJ will, and I'll just go along with it, not knowing anything.
Andy, how do you feel about that? Are you worried about being spoiled about the books?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so I think we should just do sort of our own thug slinger code and say here, we spoil everything.
So it's super fan time.
Yeah, let's just blow it up, because I think it's relevant. I think it's very relevant in terms of what they chose to put in this movie. So
we spoiled not with our mouths, but with our hearts.
That's great. So Tommy, give us.
Andy's remembered the face of his daddy. I think that's how it goes. My initial thoughts are, It's really hard to get my mind around a little bit of this is what they finally came up with after such an incredibly long time spent in development hell and everything, that this was the best way to do it. As a YA novel, like as a YA movie that doesn't have to do with anything, it's probably pretty diverting and probably a lot of fun. As anything representing the Dark Tower series, which is something that I love, it's incredibly disappointing, incredibly unsatisfying, weird. So I tried to watch it sort of both ways. And so I do think that there is some interesting stuff and there's some fun stuff in this movie if you just take it as a YA novel or a YA movie. But that is not what The Dark Tower is. And part of me wonders, and I want to hear from Andy, it feels like potentially a movie for no one. It doesn't give enough to fans. It doesn't give enough. It's too oblique and weird for newbies. And who is this film for?
Thank you for bringing that up, because I wanted to start with you on that based on, what we heard from Andy's frame of reference, because I think that's key to the conversation here, because I think really the reason what it was made is because of how popular the series is. So Andy, can you answer that question a little bit for Tommy and your initial thoughts?
I knew what the property was, and I knew it had gone through development hell. I knew it had fans. I have friends who are huge fans like you guys of this series and really wanted to see something good. They're like, "Oh, this is going to be amazing." They were excited when J.J. Abrams and the team from Lost were attached, and they're like, "Oh, this is going to be great." And I was just like, okay, well, maybe I'll read it one of these days. And I still never got around to it. And so when I finally sat down and watched it, I kind of told myself, I'm like, it does seem like a YA novel. I don't think that I really have a problem with that. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a fairly enjoyable film, although at the same time weirdly forgettable. But I could also see like why Stephen King fans might be searching for something more. But at the same time, I also go, Stephen King, I don't even know if it's fair to say 50-50 as far as, adaptations go, as far as quality.
Yeah, that's generous.
I think he probably has more bad adaptations out there than he has good adaptations.
What? Have you seen Maximum Overdrive? Okay, go ahead.
And The Mangler. Yes!
The Mangler. I keep forgetting that actually existed.
And what was the one with the giant rats?
Yep.
There are some real bad ones out there. And so it's like, it's Stephen King. I don't expect like the stuff that he's going to make or write, the adaptations, to be just really amazing. I think that, yes, I understood that this had a huge following and those people might be a little disappointed. But after watching it, I'm like, it's kind of enjoyable. I mean, I enjoyed the world. I think that's what I really enjoyed watching this, is it's a really interesting world. I didn't find anything about it confusing. I guess I could see how some people might get it a little confuddled by the way things were happening. But I'm like, I kind of got it. I got enough of it to understand the world and the setup and everything. So I enjoyed it. I just wished that when I was watching it, that the story itself didn't just fall into so many standard screenplay tropes, where I just felt like it just was a play-by-play of so many scripts that I've seen and read in the past. And I'm like, okay. So,
Akiva Goldsman.
That's what I was going to say.
Right.
I don't want to jump ahead
again.
the script there.
Sorry, I apologize.
Well, we will definitely talk about that, because I know that in our Slack channel, we've talked a lot about that in preparation for the film, is, who's writing it and what we should expect by that. But I'm really glad you said that, Andy, because I think the fact that you weren't confused is really key, especially for people who have read the full series, because there's so much world building, and it's such a comprehensive world that there's just not even close to what it is in the film. And I think even between us, we were thinking that this was going to be some sort of adaptation, for lack of a better word, adaptation of the first book. Or as we saw the trailer, we thought that it was maybe the first book with a little bit of the second one. And I think the interesting part for me, being someone who was a lover of the books, is that it took from just about every book, there were pieces in this. And that seems, from someone who's a fan of the books, it seems that's impossible. So I'm really happy to hear, Andy, that you were not confused and that you were able to appreciate it for what it was. I found it very difficult, because I am a lover of the series. I found it very difficult to divorce myself from that want of a fan to come and be objective to it. So I'm super. That's why when you said you hadn't read the books, I was so happy that you're here.
Yeah, it's very important
because we need that. And I think Tommy's question is really key too. In that, who is this movie for? Because it can't be for fans at all. It really doesn't touch even enough of the mythology to get sort of, unless you just love Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey.
I think it thinks it is.
Really?
For fans. Because there's just so many random little things put in there. But that it so seems little. Like high fives to fans that are just sort of like, as Andy said, are just sort of like painting this sort of vague picture, an understandable but vague picture of this world, that they just keep putting in so much little stuff where, for me, it's like, yeah, I get it. 1408. Yeah, I get it. Like you're 1919. All of these things that keep happening. Yeah, we saw the thinny. You didn't say it was a thinny, but I know what it is. But you never really got into it.
Right.
I think that it tried to be both and failed at very much, at least on the fan side.
Yeah. So that and that's why I think it's important that we have Andy to tell us that there was stuff that there wasn't a failure there. I mean, 1919 is such a huge deal. I've seen posts on Facebook this week talking about how they scheduled the film, the first primetime showing of the film around the country at 7:19 to make it 1919. So
1919.
I saw that on Thursday night. I'm like, that's a weird time to start a movie. What
right.
Is that
so that kind of stuff I think is.
So why didn't they put the care into? Yeah, there's like a weird rogue faction within this movie that really cares about the source material.
Well, I think my sense from reading about it is that there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen on this one.
Sure.
It had gone through so many iterations. It went through the J.J. Abrams years, and then it went through the Ron Howard years, and then it turned over to Nicola Arkle and all of his team. And I think that Ron Howard and his team were actually still tied to it. And then
he's listed as a producer.
Yeah,
Ron
right.
Howard
And there's just all these hands were kind of in the kitchen trying to get this thing made, and a lot of ideas and at work that may have just muddled it a little bit. But, in the end, and I totally appreciate and understand that for fans, it likely is disappointing. It's weird though, because like from my perspective, it has some of those details that you get in stories like Lord of the Rings that have like just reading the story or watching the film, you can sense that there's this big history around everything that's going on and all the little details throughout the film. Like I get a sense of that history without having to understand it, and so I really appreciated that, which I thought was really interesting. I mean, it is very much. Like those, and yes, I haven't read 1408, but I know I know it from the movie. So I saw the 1408. I'm like, oh, there's a Stephen King nod, and the Pennywise, Playland or whatever it was. And I saw that, and so there were a lot of little fun nods to Stephen King properties as they kind of all tie together.
And tons of 19s in the movie.
Yeah, and I don't know what the 19 is though. I guess that's something I didn't realize was a thing.
It's throughout Stephen King's writing that 19 is just this enormous number for him.
He has some amazing characters with 19 letters in their names.
19 letters in their names. It's always throughout. So like every bus that passed by, in the background of stuff, which I appreciate. In the background, numbers almost always added up to 19.
Oh, interesting.
So every time, like the overhead shot where a bus goes by and you see the overhead thing, it adds up to 19, like all that stuff. I like those little things. It's not enough, but I like those little things. And I'm glad that you brought up real quick Lord of the Rings for me, because I'm on a weird side of this, because I guess you would say I'm the film board thug that is against fantasy, not against fantasy, but fantasy doesn't thrill me that much. I don't like these kind of fake worlds and fake world building stuff like this. But this film for me was kind of like if a director said, oh, I'll take care of Lord of the Rings. And instead of Peter Jackson, some other guy did it. And he was like, instead of making 3 3-hour movies, he's like, I got it in 88 minutes.
Yeah.
He took that entire world. That entire world, all of that stuff that Peter Jackson did, and they said, we're just going to shove it into a 95-minute movie.
Yep.
The end. That's kind of the best way that I can explain on my end the kind of frustration that I have with it.
Well, and that's what I want to ask. So, how much was Stephen King involved with this? Because some of the comments that I've been getting from people are asking if Stephen King's going to be upset by this.
My understanding is he actually really appreciates it and loves what they did. He was involved all through the whole thing. And I think what he told the I don't know if it's the director or the producers, when he saw it, he said something like, you guys got it. You got the...
He said you remembered the face of your fathers is actually what he said.
Yeah. Really? Oh,
he said that in a tweet.
Yeah, and I think it was something where he said you guys got the core of it. You guys understood what the essence of it was, and you brought that to it.
Well, that's kind of what we're looking at here, right? Like the books are the fruit. Like you're eating the apple, and this movie is just the core, the leftover core. What do you do with the core? Do you eat that? No, you throw it away. No, but I ask about Stephen King's involvement because you've got to kind of wonder with all the different people that were involved, and we talk about all the different cooks in the kitchen, and Akiva Goldsman really being the fixer in Hollywood. He's the one that comes in and gets it made at the last minute. He's the best. I think there are homages to the work, but it's few and far between. So is it enough? And if Stephen King thinks that that's enough, then maybe that's okay.
Well, to be fair, Stephen King, I think, says the same thing about every adaptation when it comes out.
He also just wants it to be made. He's also said that he was upset that this one, not upset, but he's like, I get that this one is a PG-13. Hopefully the next one will be an R. He seems to be the only person thinking that this will have a sequel.
Okay, so we're jumping ahead, but what's the next
TV series? It's having a TV series sequel.
Do you think it is going to?
It's a prequel.
Well, Wizard and Glass, we should tell you, Andy, Wizard and Glass is a complete departure from the other novels in the series. And it's an entire book that is a prequel as well. So it's not to say that the TV series is going to be Wizard and Glass. It actually takes place in a completely different time than what you've seen.
Well, what it says on Wikipedia, source of all knowledge, it says the series has been confirmed to fill in the backstory to the film being based on King's The Dark Tower 4, Wizard and Glass, The Dark Tower, The Wind Through the Keyhole, and elements of The Dark Tower 1, The Gunslinger.
Okay, so that's all prequel stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, yes.
To this.
You think of it in chronological order. You have Wizard and Glass, and then Wind Through the Keyhole, which was written post Dark Tower, and then you end up at the front end with The Gunslinger. So, again, that's kind of leading it in, but... Yeah, it's really difficult to see if Stephen King thinks there's going to be a sequel. What's going to be in the sequel? What are they going to do?
Well, the sequel, they said it would be R. It would be. He said it would include Roland wearing a hat, and that the opening scene of The Dark Tower 2.
Wait, what?
Would include Roland wearing a hat. I don't know if that's
is that important, JJ?
I don't know. You guys would know. I
know. I'm
apparently it is to King.
Oh, right, the hat. I don't know. I don't remember that being a big deal. Yeah,
that's
go
sarcasm.
Ahead. Yeah. And then he says the opening scene of The Dark Tower 2, the drawing of the three, in which Roland loses two of his fingers to lobstrosities.
Lobstrosities.
Adapted.
That's the Dada Chuck Dada Chim. That's the noise they make.
What?
Oh,
what I mean to say is I love chicks and sports. All right, go ahead.
Well, no, but wait. So he said that the opening of the drawing of the three is going to be part of the sequel?
Yeah, I guess so.
Is he just throwing out like red herrings? Because
that's chaos. Because that's all
chaos.
Later.
Because the Gunslinger has pieces, or not the Gunslinger, the Dark Tower. The movie we just watched has pieces from everything surrounding all of those things. So why would you? Oh man, I'm super confused by that.
I think potentially he's a good guy to have on your team for a studio. Like this is part of his.
Who directed Maximum Overdrive.
He definitely is. He does not remember it though. Thanks, cocaine. But but I mean, maybe he's just a good soldier.
Yeah.
As far as this is his life's work, and it's finally getting some sort of release. So maybe we should take all that a little bit. I mean, part of what I want to talk about is the script. Like, is this the only way that they could have really done it?
Yeah, that's interesting because, well, I'm curious from you guys because you guys have read it. My understanding is that it's kind of a not easy to adapt series where it doesn't really have any semblance of a resolution.
Seemingly impossible.
Yeah.
Seemingly impossible.
Yeah, so I guess that's my question is like, could anybody really have effectively adapted it in a way where people would have been happy.
That's the cynical part of me. Well, not the cynical, the understandable part of me, which is I get it why they went the YA route. I mean, it is not Jake's story. This is Roland's story, the entire Dark Tower series from beginning to end. Jake is just one of the many characters within it. But to have Jake, I mean, it helps fill the 4 quadrants.
As a preteen.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. I get it why a lot of people in Hollywood land were like, we did it. We got it. If we start it with Jake and it's from him, A, he's the audience surrogate. B, we get kids in, we'll make it PG-13. C, we'll see it through his eyes, all that stuff. I get that. I do get it. And maybe that was the only way to do it. I guess as a super fan, I would say don't bother.
And Andy, we should tell you, so the non-resolution piece of the Dark Tower is kind of a Total Recall sort of thing, where it's like it opens up for a revolving door of the story. So that's the big spoiler here is that that's what you're going to get at the end of this amazing sort of epic book series. Now, what one interpretation of this script and this story is that this is another turn of that revolving door. And it's different for those reasons. And I think, we talk about whether Stephen King is okay with it. Getting the core, or the concept of getting the core, it goes towards that, right? So if the writers understood that the core of this is that this epic journey happens over and over and over again, just infuse the mythology enough, and you've now written another turn of the wheel.
Well, the director himself actually said that this is kind of a sequel to all of the books, which I thought was interesting.
He did?
Then that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what
it is. Because, for super fans, you can see, Andy, just put your mind on pause for a second. For super fans, for me, it was pretty clear that Roland is carrying around the horn of Eld in his knapsack the entire time. That's what he didn't have the entire length of the Dark Tower series, and then when he was sent up to the top floor of the Dark Tower, he was sent back to redo it, and in this next wheel, at the very end of the Dark Tower, he picks up the Horn of Eld, giving us the hope that maybe this next time, it will be different. They don't bring up any of that in this movie, of course, but for superfans, he does seem to be carrying the Horn of Eld, so that would make sense with this being the next wheel, next round about the wheel, that everything we've seen before is prologue. Now we're just seeing the next version. That still makes me want to punch the film in the face.
But that first shot, or close to the first shot, we kind of have a debate here about what the first shot is, but the idea of the carousel shot of the wheel going around, that might make it interesting. But what I would say then, if that's the case, why wouldn't you market it that way? Why wouldn't you say, why wouldn't you throw that out there? How does it hinder your ability to sell the film, to say, we loved the Dark Tower so much that here's the next thing? That's what
because you're cutting out everyone that didn't read it.
Are you really though?
I think they would. I think that's what they were afraid of, is my guess.
That's probably
is they're
fair.
trying to make, that's why it's a YA novel. Again, the entire movie is an audience surrogate, that they're trying to grab everyone.
Interesting.
Instead of just fans.
Yeah. So then do we think, so I think fans are going to be upset by this.
Yes.
I mean, I was completely disoriented in the film. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that piece. Oh, I remember that piece, but that's not the way this is supposed to be happening. That's how I felt the entire time.
That's why I keep going back to the thing of just like, why bother?
Right.
It just feels like a slightly loving money grab, but just slightly loving.
Well, it obviously is a property that, I mean, from a financial point of view, I can understand how they would be nervous about putting money into a property that's like, everybody's talking about how this is not really, it's impossible to adapt. I mean, are we going to, lose our shorts on this thing? So I can understand why they'd be like a little hesitant to put money into it right out of the gate. But I mean, obviously the right people didn't convince them. I mean, I thought it was interesting hearing that Ron Howard and his team, they had planned to do this as 3 films with TV seasons in between each of them to kind of connect it all.
See, I think that sounds awesome.
That sounds better.
Which sounds like something nobody's ever done before.
Right?
Sure.
I'm like, that's really innovative, and I kind of was excited to kind of hear about that as a possibility to do, but obviously that all fell away.
Yeah.
And then this Nicola Arkle comes in to direct it. I was like, who is this guy who they finally gave this property to? Like, I didn't even recognize his name. And I'm like, this is the guy that they picked to direct this massive Stephen King project that everybody's in love with.
Well, and how did you feel about that? I mean, how did you feel about the direction from what we saw there?
It wasn't a problem. I mean, I thought that he handled the story, the characters, the effects, everything effectively enough. But I think the script was just so by the numbers, connect the dots that I really couldn't give much credit to the director for anything because it was all so just by the books.
Yep. I felt like the script was a coloring book that hadn't been colored in yet. So there didn't seem to be any effect from the director. I mean, some of the staging, it didn't seem like there was anything noticeable from what he did. But then again, he had a piece on the screenplay as well. He was one of the cooks there. So
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there were moments that I appreciated. I liked the focus on the gunslinger and the way that he would kind of shoot. And unfortunately, they kind of spoiled it in the trailer. But that moment where he kind of stops after the Man in Black's henchmen have kidnapped Jake and have run off with him in
the skin
town.
people. Yeah, that's maybe the best part of the movie.
Yeah, and
which sucks because it's in the trailer.
Yeah, exactly. It's frustrating because he stops and he has to listen and focus, and then he shoots. That was really creative, and I enjoyed all of that element. But then you look at something like there's the fight with I don't know what it is, but whatever the creature is that comes through the rip in time or the universe,
the
or whatever it
thingy.
is.
Yeah,
That they have to fight, and that was so dark and just kind of so like, okay, yeah, here we go, we're just doing the big fight with the thing, and it really didn't do much.
Right, fake thing doing a thing. Yeah, no, I felt the same way, and the same way with the house demon.
right,
Yeah,
It was just such a forgotten scene
So
of
quick,
like,
so
who
short.
cares?
yep.
Yeah, it was a strange scene, but that was one that I didn't like the way the scene happened, but I did like the fact that it happened and the way that it's revealed. It's not like we had to go through this big exposition about, and if you go through it, then you have to fight this big demon. And I mean, we find out later, he's like, he killed the demon. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting, because I was like, what the hell was that thing?
Oh, that's true. To come out of nowhere.
Yeah, and it's like, that was really interesting, the way that they didn't set it up at all. It just happens. So I actually quite appreciated that. As bad as it was, I thought, as far as how they did it.
And the tough part is for readers, we were waiting for that.
Right.
Yeah, right.
The house demon is a thing on Nebold Street. Yeah.
And the I guess maybe that's the best thing you can say about this movie is that the things that were interesting you wanted a lot more of, and the things that were not interesting you got way too much of, even in the 88 minutes. The two things you mentioned, the house demon and the thinny, those fights, I think they're the only real action things that are not in the trailer. Is
Right.
that correct?
I think you're right.
Yeah. The trailer.
Yeah,
and
there's
the
random
trailer-
parts about the final showdown with Randall Flagg or the Man in Black with him like catching glass and stuff. In the second trailer, there was some of that, but
Yeah, I think there was a lot more of the gunslinger in the trailers, if I recall. More just about him, shooting at things, and it was like the different people in the old western town place that he's fighting them off, and then in the final slaughterhouse or whatever it is they're in.
yes,
the Dixie Pig.
The Dixie Pig.
Yep, right.
I think if you add up how many trailers I've seen for this film, it actually reaches 88 minutes. So I was surprised that there wasn't that there were.
I spent longer getting my soda. Am I right, folks? Lines at the movie theater. Sorry, that's a part of my Type 5 about movie theaters. Go ahead.
So we talk about Idris Elba becoming the gunslinger. I think he was the selection after a long list of people that were considered for this role, just like the directors and the writers lining up for this property. What did you guys think of what he did?
I thought he was excellent.
I did too.
I loved him.
Too.
He's the reason that the movie works at all for me. Actually, I really like Tom Taylor too. We'll get to him in a second. But I just thought the world weariness, how he looks in that coat, all of the ways that he handles the guns
awesome.
and stuff. He just looked,
so
awesome. That was, Roland is not necessarily African-American in the story. When he was cast, that didn't bother me because I was like, nice, Idris Elba, let's do this, Luther. And he was just extraordinary. He's just so good. I think he might be one of those actors where I'm like, I'm just good watching you no matter what.
Yeah.
He really is. I loved him in this, and absolutely he carried the weight of the film, even though the story is Jake's. For good or for bad, we're following Jake. It's kind of his journey through this particular story, but Roland is really the guy who carried it, and Elba just was just always engrossing to watch on screen, and certainly any other Dark Tower properties that include him, I would certainly go watch.
So let's talk about Jake then. We say that it's his story, and Tom, you said you liked Tom Taylor. What was special about his performance for you?
I don't know. I just thought he was adorable. I thought he was really good. Yeah. I liked that I'd never seen him before. That helped. He had that kind of look that I'm looking for a Stephen King Shine kid, which if you're looking for like the thing that Stephen King keeps going back to over and over again is the young boy with the shine. And I thought he handled himself very well. This had the chance to be, what was that kid that was in the Star Wars prequels?
Oh, I don't know his
Jake
name.
Lloyd.
Jake Lloyd. This had the chance to be a Jake Lloyd situation.
Right.
No discredit, Jake Lloyd, if you're listening. You're not. But I thought he was really, I liked him. I thought he was very sympathetic. I thought he was very interesting. I liked him.
Or speaking to Stephen King properties, the kid who was in The Shining, I thought carried it really well. The kid who did the Shining TV remake of it was horrible.
Oh, with Steven Weber?
That kid in that one. And again, no fault of his own. He's just a young actor at the time, but it was really frustrating watching him after having watched the kid in Kubrick's version. And I completely agree. Tom Taylor, I thought, did a great job as this kid who was just struggling between, trying to figure out if he's crazy, what's going on with these visions and these other worlds, and taking it all in and handling it all really well and just kind of moving along with it. The only time that I didn't like him, and I blame the writers and directors, I don't actually blame him, is when he comes home to find his stepfather and mom killed. That scene was just painful to watch. I just didn't think anybody carried it off well.
Yeah, well, and the cut there, right, that leads up to it with Matthew McConaughey saying, I left him a surprise or something?
Yeah.
It was cheap. And I think we talk about that this is now 88 minutes. It didn't start that way. So there was a lot of stuff that was on the cutting room floor. You got to
apparently
wonder.
It was 2.5 hours. And I should correct that. I keep saying 88. Now it's apparently 95.
Okay.
Right. So I apologize. I was the one that said 88. But yeah, 2.5 hours. I'd like to see that movie.
Yeah, this is what I'm curious. I'm curious if there will be a director's cut. I'd be really interested to see what additional information they provide.
Yeah.
In general, though, I thought the acting was solid all around. I didn't dislike Matthew McConaughey either. I thought he was fine. He's not the Man in Black that I envisioned. I thought so. Again, Idris Elba, not particularly Roland from the books, but carried it off. Matthew McConaughey, similarly, not particularly the Man in Black, but they embodied the characters as well as I think you could do.
I would never have pictured Matthew McConaughey having read The Stand or Eye of the Dragon in that particular character, but I really enjoyed him in it. And what I think was just interesting, it might have just been the character, but it's an interesting character, and just the way that he looks at people and plays with them and uses them as just disposable things.
They're ants.
It was just so interesting. And regardless of any writing issues that might have surrounded him as a character, I actually enjoyed Matthew McConaughey in the role quite a bit.
I did too, and you mentioned The Stand, I think, so I had to go back and look who played Randall Flagg in The Stand from the TV series.
It
was
awful.
Jamie Sheridan.
He was so wrong for that role.
Yeah, well, but he did make it look pretty evil.
I kind of dug him in the show. I kind of liked him.
You didn't like it, Andy.
I guess my issues with him they all revolve around the because that was a 5-part miniseries, as I recall, and it was the 5th, the final part of that miniseries that I just was like, I was so frustrated with him. Something about the way that they resolved everything in that, I just didn't like him in it.
They changed his name.
Well,
in the books, he's Walter O'Dim, but in the movie, they said something like Walter Paddocks.
Ooh, I didn't hear the
else
No,
notice
they
that?
did. You're right. It wasn't.
What's
wasn't
Walter
O'Dim.
Paddocks? I've never heard that name before. Walter O'Dim or Randall Flagg, the Walking Dude, the Man in Black. Like, these are all the names that we know. I don't know who Walter Paddocks is. Maybe I missed something.
And in the credits, they only list him as the Man in Black, so they don't give him the Walter name, which is interesting too. So see, I think this is an interesting point that we're all somewhat happy with the acting performances that we saw in the film. That really it's kind of the thinness of the story and the slight bit that we got in 95 minutes. Now that if we're being correct, that we were happy with the world building, we were happy with the mythology. It's just not enough. I
guess for me it was fine. I could have used a better story with a few of the typical screenplay tropes. Didn't bug me too much, but I mean, I guess from my perspective, I would love to know what it is that, and I guess I just have to go back and read the books. But like, if it were to be just the first book, like what would that adaptation look like? I'd be really curious to find out, and if that's what you guys would have expected.
The first book would make a terrible movie.
No, well, now the first book is my favorite.
JJ's
they're on the right track.
So, JJ's a super fan of the first book, which is called The Gunslinger, and he is known for being the only super fan
who likes
of the first book. Everyone loves the series starts with the second book.
Definitely
which
true.
is The Drawing of the Three. That's where, and none of those characters except Jake are in this movie. Like, this is part of the thing of like, if this is going to be the Gunslinger movie we get, it should have been Drawing of the Three. It's so good.
Well,
Gunslingers
and
rough.
the Gunslinger movie. I mean, that's the thing. If they made it, they probably could have made the first book in like 80 minutes. Or 75, like, because it's very straightforward, very very simple, it's basically sort of like it's a bellwether to the entire rest of the series, but it doesn't carry a lot of weight. It's basically it's ringing saying, hey, here's the theme that you're going to get throughout the rest, and that's why I loved it because the mythology
it does set up Jake.
is
it's the first time he meets the first version of Jake. He does
the
let
first
Jake.
version of Jake?
Yeah, there are other worlds than these.
Yeah,
what is it? The Man in Black fled across the desert, and the Gunslinger followed.
Yep.
I'm probably getting it wrong, but it's something like that.
First line.
He is just in a flight after the Man in Black. During it, he meets Jake, a different version of Jake. One would think he lets Jake die in his attempt to, I can't stop doing this because I need to face, I need to get my revenge. Should I stop talking? I feel like this is for no one.
Well, it's interesting.
He lets Jake die. He falls to his death, which was actually a little bit of a echo in the scene that Gunslinger holds Jake over the cliff, saying, "You're a spy, you're a spy." That was a little bit of a high five to fans. But in a very different way. In one version, while he has the chance to either go after the Man in Black or save Jake, he makes his choice. Jake dies, and as a result, he's sort of damned for the entire series because of that. He meets another version of Jake later, which is also a little bit of a high five for fans in the movie, when that guy shows up behind Jake when he's waiting at the stoplight and the bus is about to show up, where this guy is saying, hey, you're one of the shine, you're the shine, you're the shine. Actually, in the book, he is pushed in front of the car and is killed by one of the Men in Black's minions, and that's how he shows up in one of the things as in Midworld. Is that right, JJ?
It sounds, see, again, once you start getting into details, it's not the stuff that I'm super familiar with. I don't really remember that as much as the concepts. But Andy, you're starting to see why it becomes very difficult to sort of lace this together into a narrative storyline for a film.
Here's a question I did have that I was like, I kept asking, like, does the Dark Tower ever figure in as a actual location in the story? I was like, I wonder if, like, at some point, or are they supposed to end up in the Dark Tower? Was that a thing that was supposed to happen?
It's
and
the
never
end.
Here?
It's always the two goals of the gunslinger Roland Deschain is get his revenge on the Man in Black, and then also enter the Dark Tower.
Right, but it's very briefly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's briefly, and it's saved for the end. It's the carrot at the end of the stick that led so many people through the series, I think. I mean, wouldn't you say that, Tommy?
Yeah, no, it's almost like a MacGuffin.
Yeah, right.
For certain things, it's just a reason to be for a lot of it, and then it is treated as such in the books.
Huh.
Were there any other actors that you guys wanted to talk about? Jackie Earl Haley in this film, I thought was interesting. I could have seen more of him.
It's a big character in the books. It's weird just what they picked and what they didn't.
And I felt like he was an important character, and then his battle was so, I don't know, it just ended so softly. It seemed like there was going to be a lot of really interesting stuff happening with their battle, and then it's just like he gets hit by a car. That was the end of it.
Yeah, and
What?
with bad wire work, some of that seemed to maybe a little bit like reshoots or something. Yeah. Like, all right, we got to go.
Yeah, right. Well,
we got to keep moving. Yeah.
And I thought Dennis Haysbert was fun as Roland's dad.
I would assume that there's a lot of him in the 2.5 hour version, not just this one scene at the end of Jericho Hill where they, where they're dying, where he dies and stuff. I would assume that they cut it to the quick and they said, okay, it's about daddy issues.
Yeah,
and that's it.
It was interesting to me. I liked that bit in there. I liked having Dennis Haysbert in there as that connection for Roland. I certainly wouldn't have minded more of it, but the bit that was in there for me provided at least enough backstory for Roland so that I could kind of connect with him and his oath as a gunslinger, or his creed or code or whatever.
So moving on to the production, I think one of my favorite things about it was the hair and makeup and what we saw from what they did with the skin people. I thought they used that very effectively, especially because when those type of characters start getting introduced in the books, you start feeling like it goes a little crazy and gets a little...
It's so late in the series.
It's very late in the series, and it feels very odd. It feels like it's taken a turn that was different from the entire story. I think in the film, they actually integrated it in a way that it actually made sense to me. I was happy with it, and I thought it looked good. I thought it was a great sort of marker for them to use in what they were doing.
I loved it, and the little hints that I had, it was that's the world building that I loved in this. Is like having these people. I never really got to see what they looked like without it. I was so curious, but just like always those little bits where it starts sliding off, and they just kind of stretch it back into place. I mean,
you did get a good look at Ratface.
Yeah,
we did.
That's what they look like. Well, when Matthew McConaughey comes in and goes, "Hey, find a skin or find a face."
Yeah, but even but he always has a mask on it. So it's like I didn't really get to, because he's got like the little, like the doctor's mask over his face. So
they're animals.
They're all animals.
Interesting.
They're just animals wearing
people.
Like in the books, they're like bird people. They're like ravens wearing skin masks.
That makes more sense than when Roland says, "Do the animals still talk in your world?" Going back to like Wonder Woman and Captain America and any of these sorts of stories where it's like, somebody who's not from this particular time and place who has to figure things out.
Fish out of water stuff.
Those montages, which can always be kind of painful sometimes. It wasn't too bad here, but that was one of those moments where it's like, do the animals still talk here? I mean, it was cheeky and it was fun, and I kind of enjoyed that little moment between him and Jake. But now I think it takes on a bigger meaning, knowing that they're like animal people.
Well, that might, because I thought it was a comment about Oi. My beloved Oi, who's the Billy Bubbler,
basically a dog.
Basically,
you're talking nonsense to me.
I know. I'm this guy now. I know everyone's name.
The Oi and the Billy Bubbler. Woo!
His name. They call him Oi because he.
Oh, how things have changed.
Should we not? Should we not go into Billy Bumblers?
Do it. Yes.
Okay, Billy Bubbler it's a mix of a dog and a raccoon and something else. It's the most adorable animal you could ever have. And they call him Oi because he can just say the last part of words that he hears. And when he hears Jake as the boy, he says Oi, Oi all the time. So they call him Oi. So I thought that was a little bit of a high five to fans as far as saying, in your beloved series that you're not getting at all, there is a really lovely animal that is like super important to the entire series called Oi.
I like Andy's interpretation from what we just
I'm
found
so
way
annoying.
Better than that. But,
I know.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm the most annoying person on this podcast, but I finally have something to talk about that isn't baby triceratops for the win.
Oh, you love that.
I do.
So anything else from the production or the post-production we should talk about? The music was, in general, I was taken out of it so much because I found myself trying to separate my immediate experience from the book that I didn't really get to check it out objectively. There wasn't a whole lot of camera that was interesting to me. There wasn't a whole lot of things. I guess that's why I brought up the hair and makeup, because that was the thing that I noticed right away that really was something special for me.
The color palette was pretty dull. There wasn't a lot to like latch onto. It was all very just sort of gray and dull, even before we got to the wasteland.
Yep.
So it just, yeah. And some of the effects, it went back and forth. Like, are we talking about special effects also?
Sure.
Yeah, they went from okay to pretty dodgy at times.
Yeah.
I was surprised by some of the lack of care for the effects.
Certainly with the one that was, what would you guys call the one that comes through the rip in the universe?
Thinny.
The Thinny?
The Thinny. That one, it's just like, it was so dark watching that fight. I'm like, they had to have issues with that scene, so they just made it dark so that you didn't have to deal with the poor effects.
Yeah.
Because it was just all like, it's just such a dark scene. I didn't have problems with really anything related to the production, the cinematography. I actually kind of liked the music. I can't hum the theme or anything, but I thought it worked well for it.
Dark Tower.
But, well, yeah, there
so
was that.
dark.
I forgot the musical part of it.
Yep.
But on the whole, I think it all fit in with kind of the Akiva Goldsman's script of the whole thing. It all fits. It all works nicely. It's a nice Hollywood package for the project. So I guess I didn't have any complaints, but it also didn't stand out.
I'm going to start calling him the Wolf. You just bring him in, get it made, make it happen.
But the wolf made things better.
Oh.
He just didn't make things happen. The
Cleaned up messes,
Akiva Goldsman as the wolf is like, hey, instead of towels and cleaning it, just buy a new car. All right. Like that's the wolf of Pulp
And
Fiction
it's like,
for Akiva Goldsman.
buy a minivan, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even buying a new car. It's just putting towels on the seat and covering it up, and so it all looks nice.
And that's it.
You don't realize.
Don't
that
sit
it's
down.
actually-
Right.
Don't sit down.
Wait, well, hold on.
That's better. That makes more sense. And then quick, sell it real quick. Gotta go. I got a lot more messes to clean up.
So we've been hearing. I want to hear what your theaters were like. I saw it the first show in a really large theater in Cleveland, Ohio, and there were I think there were 8 of us in there, but it was the first show, so I saw it at like noon. A huge theater, massive, really great sound, wonderful place to see a movie, and it was very poorly attended.
My theater was actually, it wasn't sold out, but it was a really full crowd. But it was a very uninvolved audience. But it was one of those films where I'm like, I don't know. As I was watching it, I'm like, I feel like I should be reacting to this, but I'm not. And so maybe everyone else kind of had that. I mean, I'm sure they weren't overtly thinking that, but might have been feeling it.
Well, I think the movie moves at a kind of a breakneck pace, right? Through
It's breathless. There's no time to feel
There's no
anything.
time at all. And we talk about the performances of the actors. They were all superior for what we saw, but they didn't have any time to show us any depth of character because everything was just moving. So I think that there wasn't any way to react to what we were seeing when we saw it. Tommy, how was your theater?
I didn't see the film, but I'm sure that you guys had a good. No, I saw it today, and it was maybe about half filled. I saw it in Atmos. I do like the sound design of the movie quite a bit.
Yeah.
I thought that actually that worked really well. But yeah, I mean, everyone, like when he makes the joke that he does in the trailer of "You're going to like Earth a lot because of bullets." The reaction from the crowd was like something to react to. Like they were laughing too hard at like any kind of the fish out of water stuff, which made me feel like they want to react to something. Cause yeah, it was, I mean, by the time Jake was in the chair crying and being tortured while his sort of father figure is in the fight for his life, I was like, oh, I don't feel anything.
Yeah. There was no emotion there.
I'm okay. Like, I'm not bored, but I just don't feel anything because there's just been no time.
I mean, it's very summer fare, right? And I'm sure there will be some number of people that like it. But I see here in the notes, is this from you, Andy? It's saying 7.73 million on opening day. Is that right?
Yeah, from what I was looking at, just from opening day Friday, I don't think it takes Thursday previews into account, but for opening day, it only made 7.73 million. They had different people obviously had different expectations and estimates for opening weekend, but as
I know the studio started to say like, nope less. Like
right, exactly.
Everything
right.
about this movie is the studio hedging their bets.
I think it started
down from
around 30 million, and then it was 25, 24,
Yeah.
and now they're expecting like maybe 18 to 19 million if we can squeak it out. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how well it does. I mean, Dunkirk might end up back in first place. I think they were kind of hoping to at least, I mean, it did top the chart on Friday. So who knows? Maybe it could hold out, but I kind of feel like the people might not go, and it might end up falling. So
And now
we'll see.
Dunkirk, rated R, right?
I think no, it's PG-13.
Oh, it is. Oh, see, I was hoping. So I've seen it, and I was kind of hoping that at least the sort of graphic war stuff that we saw would be rated R, because when you talk about a property like this, where it can definitely have a rated R interpretation, I think having that sort of lesson, the more times Hollywood learns the lesson that a rated R film can carry, I'm all in support of that. So
Yes, very much so.
yeah,
I mean, look at Logan.
yeah, right. Logan, fantastic. Deadpool. Let's throw it out there. So I'm really excited for the next part of our show too, because with the sort of conflicted emotions that we have about this movie, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how we move forward and that we rank it.
Flick chart! Oh, come on! I need this. Flick chart, splitting all the beams. It's flick chart time. Ache. We miss you, oi.
Everybody out there listening, if you haven't checked it out yet, go take a look at flickchart.com. It provides a fun way to look at the movies that you love and hate, too, by creating a tournament-style stack ranking system. We go through the exercise here on every show, and you can find our special stack rankings for the TNR Film Board movies at flickchart.com/TNR Film Board. Where do we start?
All right. Well, first up, we have The Dark Tower or Alien Covenant.
Oh,
I'm definitely The Dark Tower.
The Dark Tower.
and I didn't see Covenant, so.
Oh, so it's
That's
a
right. You
Tower
still haven't
wins.
caught up with that one.
it's a slam dunk.
I can't wait for you to see that one so we can have alien conversations with you because I'm curious.
Is
what
now
you're
is
doing.
that one directly after Prometheus?
It is.
Then I'll just
Yes.
go see it because I have seen Prometheus. That's the only one I've seen.
All right. Next up, Dark Tower or Prisoners.
Oh, I haven't
Definitely
seen
Prisoners.
Prisoners.
The Dark Tower or Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier.
Definitely Capped.
Which one was that?
That's the one with the Winter Soldier.
Is that the one
on
where
the
he's
Robert
like
Redford.
like
It's kind of the
Joey, my
political-
friend?
Yes.
Yeah, the political.
Yeah, I
thriller
like
with
that one.
Redford. Yeah.
Captain Time.
Bucky is his name, by the way.
Bucky.
I can be
Bucky
the nurse. on that.
Barnes. Bucky Barnes pops up on our special Patreon's only weekend edition.
Ooh.
Oh.
Take a look at that.
That's right. The Dark Tower or the Mummy.
Oh, that's a good question.
Definitely Dark Tower for me.
I think it's Dark Tower for me, too.
I'm going to say the Mummy just for fun.
Just for fun. The Dark Tower or Snowden.
Snowden.
I have to abstain.
I think I'll go with Snowden too.
Okay.
The Dark Tower or Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets.
So this
I
is
saw that movie.
key for me because we were
I
on this-
actually, yeah.
Did you
I
see it
actually
too?
just saw it today.
Oh, good. I liked The Dark Tower more than Valerian, actually.
Oh, were you not on that one? Oh,
Nope.
you weren't. That's right. I listened to that one. Andy. That's right. Yeah, I would say the Dark Tower.
I actually liked Valerian. I was
Whoa.
really surprised. I didn't love it. I certainly had problems with both of these films.
Did you
But
listen to our show
Valerian-
before you went and seen it?
I haven't. I know I haven't listened to the show yet.
Oh,
I took the kids to it. My kids loved Valerian.
yeah.
They flipped out about that movie, and I kind of enjoyed it. I'm kind of torn on this one, but I think I'll side with Valerian. But you
Okay.
two picked Dark Tower, so there you go.
If Rihanna didn't do her pole scene, I'd take
Oh.
my kids to go see it. But
Yeah, you know,
Really?
I'm not ready to explain prostitution to my children.
but it's not brought up in any way where kids have any idea what was going on. My son did ask me though. This is totally off topic, but my son is like, "Why is everybody talking to him?" And so I'm like, "Oh, they're just
Right.
everybody's friends down here."
Everybody got something to sell.
It's important because you have to take your kids to it and say, these are called fetishes. Like schoolgirl, nurse. Like that's how they learn about things.
Right.
Girls on swings.
There will be a day for it. It's just not ready for my 5 and 7-year-old yet.
Not yet. Well, Parker's 6, so he's right in the middle.
Oh, wait, you did, and 6 was okay?
None of that. Yeah, he just like, oh, okay. And then it's when Rihanna comes on, it's just dancing. All they had any sense of was that she was just dancing. For
Okay,
us.
Sure.
that's a big step. I'm reconsidering now. That's good.
They
Thank you.
flippin' loved it. I couldn't believe it. My daughter was just like, if they do any more of these, I want to see it right away.
Awesome.
Wow. Okay.
You
Anyway,
might need to go
back to
see
Dark
him in
Tower.
France, but yeah.
Yeah, right. I know. Anyway, Dark Tower ends up at number 26
Okay.
on our flick chart. So,
Ooh, I wish it would have ended at 19.
Oh,
26
smack dab between Snowden and Valerian.
out of how
If
many?
out of 61.
Okay.
So if it were number 19, it would be between Captain America, Civil War, and Spectre.
Yeah, it's not as good as those movies.
It's not, yeah. And then Ant-Man, Looper, Jurassic World, Winter Soldier, Avengers: Age of Ultron and Snowden. So yeah, I can see why it's not above any of those.
So for my Letterboxd ranking, I'm going to give it a 2.5. It's right in the middle for me. I think it's a terribly bland movie, and apart from my feelings of being let down as a fan, I think it's fine. I think it handles it, and I'm super happy with the cast. So that's why I put it in there.
I'll concur with that, if that means I agree.
2.5.
That's interesting that you guys give it 2.5, but it seemed like you disliked it so much.
I think it's
it
mostly
must be
because of
just
our
the
fandom.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah. It must be the world that's bringing that in. Because I'm at 3-star. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. I thought it was pretty bland, but I thought it was a pretty interesting world. So I feel like we're so close in rankings, but at the same time, it's just, I don't know. I find that so interesting that you guys are like just not huge fans, but there it is.
There are other worlds than these.
See, and now for our Heart No Heart, I put it on the like side. So that was the difference between this and Valerian for me, is that Valerian was a not like for me, but this one I actually liked. Again, it's nothing. If you read the books, it's a Dark Tower story. It's just another one. And I think, honestly, the revelation that we had on the show here, that it could be looked at as the sequel to the books, I think that would be super helpful to fans out there in the world. But again, I understand why they're not saying that because of non-fans. So for you guys, is it like or not like?
I liked it. I'd watch another one.
Tommy?
What is this?
Like, not like. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Like, not like. This
Well,
is
on
new.
Letterboxd, you get
when
the-
did we
you
start
know-
doing this?
Well, on Letterboxd, you get the star ratings, but it also asks you if you give it a heart or not. So, I mean, you can have a 5-star film, but it's like, it's 5 stars, but I don't like it that much. Or, man, that's a 1-star film, but I love it.
What?
I think it makes
All right.
much more sense for us to evaluate our 2.5s and see whether we liked it or not.
If I wasn't a fan of the books, I would like. Because I'm a fan of the books, no like. So split that heart. Woo! I don't understand what's happening. This is new.
I think that's totally fair. So,
Okay.
Where do we go from here? Next month, we have a big anticipated movie for the film board, Kingsman: The Golden Circle.
Yay!
Looking at a sequel there. I'm super excited about that movie. How about you guys?
Very
Very
excited.
much.
And Andy, over there on the main show, you guys started the full Star Trek-a-thon, right?
That's right. We did. We kicked it off with motion picture. We're going all the way through Star Trek Beyond. So it's going to be a beefy 13-week series, and it's pretty fun. I mean, and weirdly, as much as I was dreading rewatching Star Trek the motion picture, I kind of loved it, and I was totally not expecting that.
That's awesome. And
So yeah, but Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan is next, which I'm very excited to rewatch.
which is kind of everybody's favorite, right?
Yeah, although Pete
Sentimental
kind
favorite,
of
we'll say.
alluded to the fact that he might have a new favorite, so I'm really curious to kind of go through the series with him and see what's his new favorite.
And didn't we?
The one with the Mohawk guy on the bus.
The Mohawk guy.
That's all I remember about
Star Trek 4?
That's
Star Trek 4, yeah.
Voyage Home, yeah. No, I think, and we just put up on our from I think Facebook that there is a what is the big events called where everybody can watch Wrath of Khan together in the theater coming out soon, right? Fathom event? Is that happening?
Yeah, Fathom's right. Yeah, Fathom is putting it out there again.
See, you guys talk about bellwethers. You guys are out there leading the charge.
Here.
Well, I'm really glad we got to talk about this movie tonight, and I'm so glad that we actually had a mixed group of people who had read the books and not, because I think that made for a much better conversation. We'll look forward to Kingsman next month.
Otherwise it would have just been a lot of me. Nobody cares for that.
I don't know. I'm happy that we had you here for all the language, because I don't think I forgot it, and Andy didn't know it. So,
Well, thank you, I beg.
good night, Tommy.
Good night, buddy.
Thanks, Andy. See you later.
We'll see you in another part of the universe.
And thank you so much for listening to The Film Board. You can find and follow us over on Facebook and Twitter, and we would love it if you would help us by joining up as a patron on patreon.com/thenextreel. Consider giving us a rating and a review on iTunes, or even better, tell all the movie lovers in your life that they should come hang out with us on The Next Reel, because when the movie ends, our conversation begins. Till next.
See, the point was the Horn of Eld, he had left it behind in Jericho Hill before. And so once the tower takes him back, then he has to re-put it in his knapsack, and that's the chance that this wheel will be better.
And
Does that make sense?
Did you say you saw the horn?
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure that
Was
that's
that what
why
he was drinking out of?
No.
No, that
'Cause
was
it was
his,
like the weirdest
Horn
looking
is something you blow.
canteen.
that weird.
It's like, what is that?
No, it was that open-mouthed thing in the back of his knapsack. The horn looks kind of like a Viking horn that you'd be like through.
Oh.
That's the Horn of Eld. I did a great job of the Horn of Eld, and so yeah. So I'm going to keep recording myself.
Well, no,
and talk about all the dumb stuff for the next 15,000 years. Is that cool?
Okay, well, you can't.
15,000
I actually
years,
have
go ahead.
control of the button, so you need to tell me when to turn it off.
Oh no!
This is all
This has
changing.
never happened before. This is when I shine. This is when I get all of my cool stuff after the song when no one's listening anymore. All right, I'll go.